Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here today to talk about invisible disability. So many people ask the question of what is invisible disability, and we're here to explain that today. As a matter of fact, one of the responses from this event I got on Facebook mentioned that the event is so needed because folks who have even a handicap sticker on their car end up not being allowed to park in handicap spots because people doubt that they have a disability and think that they're trying to scam something. So it's a very important topic, and we're so happy to be here today to talk about it. It would be, it would take us forever to talk about all the accomplishments of the folks that are on our call with us, our Zoom with us today, but I'm not going to do that. We want to hear from them directly. So their bios were on the Eventbrite invitation and description. They're also going to be on our website as well. And you can certainly find out more about them there. But without further ado, what I really want to do is introduce our panelists. So today we have Erica Miller, we have Jacob Levy, we have our wonderful Wendiann Alfieri, and of course, Laura Laria. So we're going to turn it over to Robbie shortly. A few things I just want to mention again for those of you who just came in, that you can put your questions in the chat if you have any questions for us. That would be great. We are going to have time for a Q&A afterwards. Inform Your Community is an organization that focuses especially on having fun events that we infuse with important information. And this event is from our speaker series event called the Know It All series. So please, without further ado, Robbie, we would love for you to begin our question and answer.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am Robbie Copley. I am your moderator this evening. I use he, him pronouns. And by the way, I just learned this 5 seconds ago, that you can click on the little menu on your the video of you, and you can rename yourself if you want to add your pronouns or change your name. I just figured that out, so I thought I'd share. For our low vision friends, I am a gingery white male. I'm wearing a green checkered shirt because I'm essentially a 6'3" leprechaun. And behind me is some books and plants and a portrait of my cat. I would like to start by asking each of our panelists to, maybe one by one, I guess maybe we'll start with Dr. Miller. She's at the top of my screen. How do you define or describe an invisible disability? And has it changed over time?
Sure. Please call me Erica, everybody. And do you want me to also start just to describe the background and who I am? And for those,
That'd be nice.
I am a white female identifying individual. I have brown hair, about shoulder length. Sort of hard to see. I'm wearing like a light blue sweatshirt, 2 sweatshirts, because for some reason I am freezing. And I have blurred my background because behind me is my messy washing machine that nobody needs to see during this event. So I think your question, sorry, just to reiterate, was what is an invisible disability? Maybe how has this kind of shifted over time?
Yeah.
You know, I think it can be an individual definition. And I think, you know, I'd never want to omit anybody that may feel like they do have like an invisible disability, and that feels important to them. For me, I think the way I often think about it is, again, defined by how other people experience kind of their world and what they see. And if they feel like a certain situation impacts their daily living, social world, learning, friendships, work situation, right? In ways that sometimes we can't see, that the, you know, other individuals view this person in the world and don't notice or don't recognize or don't even think to go there, that they might have some kind of struggle or challenge that they're facing. And I do think it has shifted over time, in the sense that I think as a society, hopefully we've become a little bit more expansive of what this means, a little bit more understanding, taking a wider lens. But I don't think that always happens in every single situation. And I think sometimes, in my experience, I do a lot of work, and I want to give everyone a chance to answer, of course. So let me know when to kind of be quiet. But when I do a lot of work with kids and I do a lot of evaluations for students with mental health learning challenges, that even sometimes if they're quote unquote labeled by the school system, it is still not taken into account. And kids sometimes can still be viewed as not trying hard enough, not working hard enough. And these are often by well-meaning professionals. So I think probably it has shifted over time, and I still think there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think we're all still learning, right, all the time about each other and ourselves. So Wendiann, maybe you could go next and talk a little bit about what you think an invisible disability is and how it has changed for you over time, if at all, and maybe also why it's important for you.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous. My name's Wendy. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and my background has a bunch of stickers on my walls. I think invisible disability to me means, well, for personally, I have a varying mental illnesses. But I recently, I guess you could say the second part is my view has shifted the more I've like learned a little bit about different types of illnesses people have that you can't see, like autoimmune, chronic pain, learning disabilities. You know, I've seen a lot of people with different things like that. My mom has Crohn's, so you know, definitely her having that has definitely shifted my view into realizing there's like a broader spectrum of just invisible disability. It's not necessarily just mental illness. It's not necessarily something that just applies to me. And I think that was a good realization. You know, the way I found out with my mom having Crohn's, it's not exactly the way you want to learn things, but nothing really is when that's what makes it learning. For me personally, my disabilities, I guess I like to say that they don't define me. I like to say, but they are part of my definition. They're part of who I am. One of my disabilities is actually DID. I have some different personality stuff going on. So even though that is a mental, like the illness, to me, it really is part of who I am because it's personality. Even if it's not how I am now, it's still part of me. And I wouldn't be who I am with it. It is a struggle, but it's still who I am.
Mm-hmm. Great. How about Jacob? Hi, Jacob.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hey, Robbie. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Levy. I am a white male, brown straight hair, blue eyes. I'm wearing a teal shirt. Not a whole lot of exciting stuff in the background. I'm just in my office. So yeah, invisible disability. So I grew up with a learning disability. I actually acquired a disability at birth due to hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus basically means water on the brain. Essentially, it's a brain hemorrhage. So it resulted in long-term disability. I essentially struggle with my memory retrieval, whether it's short-term or long-term. And I think one of the ways that I think what's really interesting about disability is like, this is just my opinion. I think a disability is not an inability to do something. Rather, I think it's an opportunity to go a different path to arrive at a solution to something. And I think it's on this path where like novel and new ideas exist. That's been my experience. So while I struggle with my memory, I excelled in music. I've been playing music since I was a kid. I would sit at a piano and you could play me any song on the radio and I'll play it right back. So that's my auditory sense. I wear glasses. I had a lazy eye. That was my weakness. And then I think your brain can inadvertently compensate and rewire itself. And that's what happened to me. So when I hear disability, I'm always fascinated because I always think it's like, I see it as like my superpower.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and I like the idea, and although I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct that we're all on a spectrum of like functionality at different times, and yeah, well, we'll get into terminology. You guys can help me understand that. But Laura, if you'd like to chime in.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I actually have a background of photograph that I took at the Belmore, Long Island train station during a sunset. So it's kind of looks like the sun is going through some dark clouds.
You look like an angel.
I was, and during meetings, people are actually distracted by this. So I contemplate on changing it, but yes, there's an aura of lights coming through. I have auburn hair. It's pulled up in a bun. I have glasses on today. I am a white female and wearing various pastel colored shirts. So invisible disabilities have been part of my life since I was 10 years old. Having type 1 diabetes, Hashimoto's disease, which is a thyroid condition, which nobody can see, neither can I, until it affected me physically. So for me, invisible disabilities mean that I know that they're there and my loved ones know that it's there, but yet it's visible when I talk about it, when it's actually affecting me. My blood sugar is high, when perhaps there's something going on that you can physically see. I'm now legally blind, so if you have a white cane, while blindness is an invisible disability, but when it actually now you have instruments, tools, guide dog, and now for me, it becomes a little bit more visible. But typically invisible disabilities are hidden, as they're actually now a terminology that's becoming more popular under hidden, that the public can't see unless you share. And it's often times with invisible disabilities, I forget I have things that are going on. I had a kidney transplant, it'll be 16 years. So until I don't feel well, I kind of forget. And so even though my tools like my insulin pump, my continuous glucose monitor remind me that I have it because I have these tools, otherwise I kind of forget. So I also work in the field with people with invisible disabilities. I'm an addiction therapist. I also work with people with mental health and in mental health, wellness, as I call it. And so I live it, and my professional life is also surrounded by people with invisible disabilities. So it is challenging. And I also talk to my clients as well. It's challenging. When you have a great day, you kind of forget that I think that that's also the kind of the silver lining, is that sometimes you can just live for the moment and forget about things. So, but that's how I define it. And until my type 1 diabetes affected me physically, that's when I, was completely invisible. So that's,
what do you think are
something.
some like common misconceptions?
I
that
agree. A lot of them are.
I know that we're always dealing in stereotypes, and so what are the common ones, and how, maybe you can give us an example of a way that you've dispelled one? Or
I will give you actually two. When I was diagnosed at 10 years old and I was going back to class, I think it was 4th or 5th grade, the young man that sat behind me, who was still one of my closest friends, said he didn't want to sit behind me because he thought he was going to catch diabetes. And so we still laugh about it many moons later, but those are the things like, who knew, especially kids, that here is something that is non-contagious, invisible disabilities. Another favorite of mine is I belong to a book club, and I still do. A friend of mine joined in with me, but because of my legal blindness, I don't drive. She drove, and we had some food, and during that, somebody in the group said, "Oh, are you Laura's driver?" And she's like, "No, I'm Laura's best friend." And she's like, is Laura really blind? And she goes, I think you should talk to Laura about this, because here I am with my large print book. Here I am legally blind. I shared this because I get the large print, and people are still asking other people behind my back, like, is she really blind? She's walking, fine. I have tunnel vision. So people are also challenged by how to talk about this, or how to ask someone, should you ask? I'm very open about it. I'd rather educate somebody than somebody feel that I'm not approachable, and maybe they can learn how to approach people. But that's just me, personally. I'm very open, and I love to hear people's questions or misconceptions. People are curious, and that to me is human nature, and maybe part of our role in life and society is to help guide from our own experience.
Yeah, it sounds like that person might have confused blindness with hearing loss. Like they were asking someone in front of you, they could have just asked you.
And then my friend said, I think you need to ask Laura, which was a great segue to be like, she's open to it.
Yeah.
And those are right. So those are moments that people do have misconceptions. And like I said, I think perhaps if people are more willing and comfortable to talk about their invisible disabilities, people can understand. Just because they have a hang tag, as I do with my significant other, and I get out, I may walk okay, but at night I can't see anything. And people do question, they'll look at it, they'll look at people's license plate. Oh, are they really disabled? It's very interesting how people actually question all of this. Yes, there are scams, and they're going on all the time, and it also affects our community, people with disabilities, because of it. So that challenges us as well.
Also, you're jogging my memory about my mother, who recently went blind due to macular degeneration, and she uses a lot of tools to overcome it. Like Jacob was saying, she finds opportunities and tools, and large print books and things, and magnifying glasses, and
there is a wealth of good tools out there. Zoom is another one. I had a client who was deaf, and we started using the chat option in order to communicate. So, right, I agree. Jacob was right. They're just, it allows you to discover other opportunities to live life as best as you can.
Erica, what kind of misconceptions or stereotypes have you had to battle?
Yeah, I think often, I mean, there's a host of things. I think a few different things. Things like they're not working hard enough. If people just tried harder, that's all it is. It's a motivation, or it's an effort issue here, right? When oftentimes what I find is people are working overtime. Sort of like Jacob was saying, it can actually translate into all these amazing gifts and talents and other skill sets, because the research, I think, bears out exactly in what you've shown, that we tend to compensate. And so that almost can be, I think, confusing sometimes for people. How come this person can do X so well, so amazingly, almost miraculously, with like no effort, but Y is so much more of a challenge, right? Whatever X and Y kind of might be. People don't always recognize that it's more than that, or the way that people frame kind of sometimes like disruptive behaviors in kids, right? That there's this intent to harm or an intent not to succeed, right? And so at least that's kind of from my experience and working with people, is that this is like a misconception because it's something that they can't see. And because sometimes hidden disabilities present differently in different situations, they might be more apparent in certain environments and less apparent in certain environments, or time, right? Kind of like what Laura was saying, right? The daytime might be a little bit better than the evening time, or at one point in your life, something like you said, you mentioned you had diabetes, but it didn't impact your life in the same way that it is now, right? So people not being able to witness or understand that actually things ebb and flow and change over time. And that has nothing to do with the person's effort shifting in any capacity, or motivation or drive or kind of goodness to succeed.
Good point. Jacob or Wendiann, do you guys want to chime in about stereotypes you've had to battle?
I mean, I get the classic one, like, you don't look disabled. You know, that's like the, yeah,
Mhm.
I've gotten that before. Yeah, I mean, just like growing up with a disability, having an IEP, I had like small accommodations, like read aloud accommodations, extended time, not very big accommodations. It was mostly it was mostly my choice. Um, so I would basically use them for like big tests, you know, SATs, big exams. Not like if it's either I knew the material or I didn't, you know. Like I majored in music in college, and like that was my first love, you know. So I didn't really need accommodations. Either I knew it or I didn't. But if it was like a state test or it was like brutal, you know, like really intense, like yeah, I got extended time. So I think it kind of just depends. Um, I think it's circumstantial indeed.
Wendy, what do you think? What kind of stereotypes have you had to fight off?
I've had a lot. It's almost hard to like. It's almost hard to say stereotype. I have a lot of different mental illnesses, but sometimes like some of them like don't really people don't know enough about them to know like certain stereotypes. One that I have gotten though is with my DID. I've heard years ago, only a few years ago when I was diagnosed with it, they had called it something different. They had called it multiple personality disorder. Some of the stereotypes I got when I got that diagnosis that I thought that because I didn't really realize what was going on either. This was years ago, but not that long ago, not under a decade, I was told that I had multiple personality disorder. And what that meant to me at the time was like I'd seen a movie where that was apparent. It was like, oh, I just snap, like I switch personalities just like that. And I don't remember anything. And that's not exactly how it works. That's how it's portrayed a lot. That's what people think of it is. But dissociative identity disorder has a lot more layers to it than just forgetting. I've had things where psychotic episodes, I've had, the alters take over, but the disassociation factor, I didn't even realize what it was until the new term came about. And it's like when you're like out of your body kind of thing. It's very hard to explain, but it's kind of like a coping mechanism you use if you're experiencing trauma, or maybe you are having alters happen, you're not fully aware, but you are there. That's a stereotype I've had to fight off with my schizophrenia. Sometimes I have weird noises I make, or like I'll like just talk to myself. Recently, over years, it's gotten a little worse. I've had people like mistake my illness for someone else's illness. I've had people like wonder if I was like on drugs or something. Is like, even if I was, why are you like, it's not right to judge, but I've had people literally be like, what's wrong with you? Like, are you on drugs or something? And I'm like, no, I am not. Gratefully, I don't have that disability, but I am schizophrenic. I do have random mannerisms and stuttering and stuff. So that's something that really hurt me, because it's like not just disrespecting my illness, it's disrespecting others' mental illness, which I'm gratefully not having to experience. But it kind of offended me on two fronts. But it's like some people genuinely don't know how to react, and that even though they don't know how to react, there's still like basic respect that like you should always give someone, because you don't know what's going on in someone else's shoes, whether they have an invisible disability or not, whether they're even diagnosed with an invisible disability or not.
Mhm.
A lot of people have invisible disabilities and don't know that they do.
Yeah, that's important.
Can I say one thing there? Actually, it's actually really interesting, Wendy, and you saying that, because actually, Laura, when you were talking about the Hashimoto's, I recently got diagnosed with some thyroid issues, and I never even thought actually of that even being a hidden disability. Also, like hypothyroidism and quite likely Hashimoto's, but it didn't even occur to me, right? Which is so interesting until right now. And also thinking, Wendy, a little bit about what you were saying, you kind of spurred like another thought, which was that in my mind, both, I think people sometimes think people are not trying hard enough, right? When there's like a hidden disability. And also the flip side of that is something that I've encountered, is that let's kind of not think about these people as being possible to achieve and be success. Let's not take into account their gifts and talents and skills, right? So kind of underestimating, I think, their worth and abilities. I don't know if that's resonates with either of you, but it's something I've definitely seen in my work.
I'm actually challenged with that, doing treatment plans for our clients with addiction and or mental health. It's not always, the dual diagnosis are co-occurring, but our field has switched more, yes, person-centered, which is wonderful. However, we're also challenged by, we sometimes can see that, a person can do, something that they said in the past that they loved and then forgot about it. Yet I'm remembering that, what made them happy. And so we're actually now being told not to focus on how we can guide them to improve their lives. We're actually just letting the people we're working with do their own treatment plan. So we're challenged by that, because sometimes I felt like we were able to pinpoint in our, cognitive behavioral therapy and say like, hey, remember when you said that really made you happy? What about this? And we're being pushed back. So that collaboration has been
be
challenged.
The historian anymore, right? It's like, it's sometimes when you're in it, you forget your history totally.
So, I feel like that while person-centered, I'm all for, we're kind of being pushed as professionals. And I don't look at it as like the person isn't doing their best, but sometimes they just need like a little reminder, like, hey, remember that you still want to work on that, using that collaboratively. So I feel that while we've moved ahead, there are still some barriers, to that, while we can help them make that decision by adding those suggestions, and yes, our clients also, people in addiction with all of the derogatory terms. And sometimes they use it themselves because they've heard it so long, self-esteem, it's affected our self-esteem. So that's what we work on as well. And it's tough. It's tough when the world around you is still trying to figure out if you are disabled. And I looked at it as like, how is it affecting you if I am or not?
Interesting. I'm wondering now about COVID and how the pandemic has affected people with invisible disabilities. Like I imagine in some ways it's been better to be behind the screen and not having to present maybe in person and deal with people in person, but of course it depends. But I'm wondering about your experience. Like I think Wendiann, you said something about lately you're not having to interface as much or something along those lines. What do you think? How has COVID, has it been isolating? Has it been hard for you?
I'm gonna be honest, when COVID first really hit, I went to I live in supported housing, but I went with my parents because everything was going crazy. No one knew what was going on. So I stayed with them for a few months. And the week it happened, the thing is, I have a lot of paranoia issues. And, when everybody was paranoid about COVID, when you saw online, everybody was like, oh, just don't touch your face and it'll be fine. Like, because that was the thing people are telling people, just don't touch your face. And then like a week later, everybody's wearing masks, everybody's grabbing toilet paper like crazy. And I almost felt like I was calm at first, because I've had a lot of paranoia and intrusive images and thoughts and worries of things really weird that would happen. So the start of this like happening and like everybody panicking, I'm like, this is just goes on in my head all the time. And you know, as it went on, the gravity of it started to hit a little more, and I realized I wasn't prepared at all. There is nothing to prepare for something like this, no matter how many paranoid thoughts you have. But it did at first give me kind of like I was almost like calm, because everyone in my family was kind of like thinking the way I would, like planning if there was an emergency. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'll get like a bunch of like random cleaning supplies that I really don't need right now, but like, oh, what if I run out? So like when COVID started and my parents took me from my supported housing to theirs, I actually brought all the toilet paper that I had here, the whole stack, for them. I was like, all right, you know, I nobody knows when it's coming, but it does give a weird sense, because you know, sometimes things in your head are so real that when they're outside of it, when there's something bizarre actually happening, it almost gives you an element of, oh, I can handle this. But you know, it went on, and I, you know, my mom got COVID, I got COVID. You know, we got the lesser strain like in 2021 around, but it was very scary. The first day I had COVID, I was very sick. And then I was like, I don't know, should I go to the hospital? And the next day, for the rest of that quarantine, I was absolutely fine. But it's really scary because you don't really realize, I feel like COVID is like an invisible illness, not necessarily, I think it's become, I think people, the way they think now that COVID has a traumatic effect on people. Yeah. And it's almost like it's caused a sort of, it could cause like a PTSD kind of thing. I mean, think of all the essential workers, the nurses, the doctors, the craziness of like the sad things of like funeral homes not being able to like have enough bodies in the morgue. Like it feels like it's become its own term. Like the pandemic has kind of slipped a little bit into people. I heard a while ago on TV, I was in a doctor's office and I saw on TV that like depression and suicide rates for like teens and stuff has gone up tremendously since COVID started. And it really does feel like, even though it's a physical illness, it's had so much other effects on people. You know, people are developing invisible illness because of it. People who already have invisible illness because of it are getting worse or trying to cope with it. So I think it has its own like element of various things with everything going on in the world that kind of resulted from it, you know, or that's following. It feels like it's its own term.
It's
that
so
like
true.
Like in 30 years, you're going to see a commercial on TV like, oh, if you have this, you could go here for help. Like that's just how it feels.
Yeah, especially the long COVID and the PTSD and just the collective trauma of it. Very interesting, very good point. I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you all about terminology and the language that we use around it. We talked a little bit about stereotypes and stuff, but specifically, like, you know, when I was thinking about doing this event, I was thinking, you know, is the word impairment, you know, like when is that an okay word to use? You know, I know like my mother says she's visually impaired. She, you know, she's like she's legally blind, but you know, when is impairment not the right word? Or like when is kind of, you know, gifted, is that always a better term? Or, you know what I mean? Like how do you guys navigate the language and the terminology of disability?
When it's not used as a diagnosis, when it's not, oh, this person has this, you know, or, you know, a family member saying, oh, you have this, okay. Like when it's used, not necessarily derogatory, but as kind of like a thrown around term, like an insult, or maybe like calling someone like schizo, like it'd be like calling someone stupid. Like you could call someone schizophrenic if you're talking like about, oh, this person has schizophrenia, but then when they're like, oh, that person's schizophrenic, or you're just schizophrenic, or you're just paranoid, or you're just delusional, like when it's not a diagnosis, because I want to be very clear, diagnoses are very different and very varying. I mean, you look at the DSM, there's so many different things. I mean, even like unexpected things, like a little off topic, but OCD, I recently learned that one of the things under OCD is hoarding disorder. And, you know, one of the stigma of OCD, people just think, oh, they clean all the time. But no, there's like literally hoarding is OCD because of the compulsion. I think when it's not used as a diagnosis, diagnoses are for treatment, not for how you treat people.
Well said. And I know OCD is one of those things that people like to say that they have if they're cleaning a lot, like, or if they're, you know, if they're being particular about something. And it's something that I've become sensitive to, that I'm like, you probably shouldn't refer to yourself.
It's almost
that way.
one of those things that in some communities or some people, it's almost like I have OCD, I clean all the time. And you know, I think there's there may be because somebody feels possibly a little bit of embarrassment or shame, or feels the need to like talk about it in a way that's self-protective because maybe they are insecure about their need to clean. And yet I think it also kind of maybe minimizes, on the other hand, for some people actually how debilitating OCD can actually be. So people tend to just talk about, it's what makes me clean so much of the time. And yet for a lot of people that have OCD, it is so much more all encompassing and so much more debilitating than being quote unquote like a neat freak, if that makes sense. To go back and answer like the other part of your question, you know, I think the terms really do shift a lot of the time. And thinking about what Wendiann said, and it's something that I really often think about, is, you know, this is the diagnosis in the DSM, and what is the purpose of the report or of the document that I'm actually including this term into, right? Is it to get accommodations? Is it to get something from the state, right? Like I do feel this need to have to say, this is the term. And yet, and sometimes it's in there. And yet then sometimes I try to put, if it feels necessary, some psychoeducation around the term I'm using. So, you know, for example, in a lot of places, high functioning autism is the term to explain students who have autism or people who have autism, but who are, you know, bright and excelling in many ways, and they don't have any other kinds of like intellectual impairment or disability, right? There's like so many words even now for that, and it's shifting. And yet that community does not like to have those terms, right? That is not what they want to be called. And so I think also going back into the community and saying, what feels good to you, right? If you are working with that community, I think to me, it often involves being connected to that community in some capacity and finding what the terms that they want to be called and using them back. And that can change over time. Our language, I find, is something that's always evolving, always shifting.
And it shapes how we all think about everything, the
Totally.
language. What about like representations in the media? Do you guys have any, I don't know if it's a celebrity or a fictional character or something that you look to for a positive? I guess if you have an egregious example, that could work as a counter example, but is there anywhere that you go to, you kind of look up to in terms of that? Or are there good representations of invisibly disabled folks?
I have one of my favorite movies. I'm going to spoil it a little bit for the purpose of this. It's called Primal Fear. And
I think I saw that.
If you've seen it, basically, I've looked back at it, you know, after having been diagnosed with, the movie is about this kid who kind of like is suspected of murdering someone. And this lawyer's trying to get him like out of it. But then he realizes this kid did it, but he has multiple personality disorder, that it was his other personality that did it. And it really, the actor really portrays what it's almost like for a lot of people. Like, I mean, I did say earlier, dissociation is different, but there are instances when you snap. It's just there's a broader like change, kind of like very abruptly. Like that is part of it, but that's not all of it. And the movie plays out, and the kid like gets freed, and at the end, the twist is this kid made it all up. So it's a very confusing representation, because while it was going on, you really understand, like the actor really portrayed it, what it could be like for people really well. And then at the end, it's kind of the reality of people are, it's really like an act, and it's very confusing for me, even though it's one of my favorite movies, because in real life, it's like they're like people doubt people because of those things. And not that that happens all the time, but the concept of someone understanding on such a level and just making it up really shows, like, it really does show both sides. It really is the best and worst representation I've seen of mental illness, because it does at the end bring apart the stigma, the reason for the stigma about it, that this person's faking it the whole time. But it honestly doesn't change the part of the movie where you really do see what it's like for this character, because it really did resonate with me. It's really something I can understand.
I agree with you. It was a gripping, phenomenal movie, working with people who have, mental health diagnoses. And I think it was done really well, both from on all sides. I agree with you. I hope that other people watch it. It was very sad as well, because I agree with you. At the end, you're like, what? And
it sounds almost like a cheap twist. Like they could have.
Well, is it? And that's
know.
what you left with. Is it really? Or is it that's how they are? And so movies are something to also interpret, at the end, some of them will leave you off as that. But I agree with it, Wendiann. And, there's so many movies out there that portray different disabilities. I have really 4 types of invisible disabilities. And, I look at, different movies throughout my life, and some of them are portrayed, well, but nobody lives disabilities the same way. And not everybody embraces them. And are you right and wrong if you don't want to embrace them? There's just some people decide not to take care of themselves. Transplant community, a lot of teenagers, young adults think they're invincible, and they're like, I don't want to take my meds. Nothing's going to happen with me. And they really do lose their transplanted organs. That's, a reality in there. So, it varies. I don't think I have a hero. I think Mary Tyler Moore, living her life, with type 1 diabetes, very open publicly with it, did it as graceful as she could. And, she also contributed to the diabetes community, being open, in public about it. And, she was, somebody who had money. Maybe she had people helping her, do things in life. And as maybe, she was losing her sight and so on. So, there are different lifestyles and challenges dealing with disabilities. So I don't think I have any particular person, but that's who stands out for me.
Cool. All right, I've grilled you guys a lot. I wonder if anybody else has any questions before we wrap up. Anybody in the chat wanna, you can ask a question, or actually, if you wanna raise your hand and then I can call on you to unmute. I guess we lost Jacob. I hope everything's okay. Yeah, Jessica had your hand up before. Yeah, Jessica, go ahead and unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Jessica, and this is kind of like what I do for a living. So I'm having a great appreciation of what you've done so far. And the reason why people shout at blind people is because they assume, because there's something called assumption of multiple disabilities. It's like a real term, and we throw it around a lot in the disability field, because what happens is they assume because you're blind, you must be deaf too. And the assumption is that if you have CP, then you must be intellectually disabled. Otherwise, people wouldn't treat me like, say, hello, how are you today? And I wouldn't even treat an intellectually disabled adult that way. So it's an assumption that people have. It's totally wrong. We all know it is, and I'm sure it happened to you folks too. And I'm wondering how you deal with that.
Thank you for that. Good point. Anybody want to respond?
I will. I walk sometimes a little off, and I can't see below my chin because I have tunnel vision. So it's either I look down or I look up, something's obviously going to be missing in my frame. I have been said, hey, move over, or what are you, blind? Because I've bumped into somebody, I've tripped over somebody in a wheelchair because I was looking straight and they were coming, right under me. Also those suitcases, the police, notorious. I've, tripped over young children, and people, the parents will look at me and I'm like, then it's like, do you apologize? Do you just say, just sorry without having to explain your disability? At that juncture, I'm like, who cares? Does anybody care? Are they going to just be angry at me? So when I go out, especially on my own, I already know that there will be some challenges ahead, literally and figuratively. So, I'm prepared. And I just realized whether people's like, hey, watch it, or what are you, blind? I just don't even bother.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, you can only control your environment and yourself, and you don't know how other people are going to react. Are they going to use that in an argument? Are they having a bad day and I may get punched out? I mean, who knows? And now in this temperature in the world.
Have you ever walked with a stick?
Oh, I have a white cane. And, some people really don't care, especially Penn Station during rush hour.
No.
You're just really invisible to the world. And I've actually looked around and people just walk by you or whatever. And I'm like, am I really invisible too? Like, I've questioned that. And I'm not angry about it. I just kind of figure I'm not going to even bother. If a person in a wheelchair, all I say is I'm sorry. I'm not going to say sorry, I am, whatever. Because in the scheme of things, it really doesn't pertain to them. And that's how I cope with it. But I have daily challenges that way. And or you just like shaking somebody's hand. I can't see, I miss it, and some people think I'm rude. Those daily daily issues. So I appreciate that.
I have another question in the chat. Jen said, how do you talk to your coworkers about your work style differences? She says, I work differently than my colleagues and feel like they judge me for my work style, despite the fact that I'm always getting positive reviews for productivity. And I don't know how often I need to out myself, talk about my disabilities, as some coworkers make me feel unsafe to do so. How do you talk about it at work? How do you bring it up to your colleagues or your boss or your teammate? Is there a safe way?
For me, I have always been public about it because I also want to be safe that things aren't in my way. Especially during COVID and my transplant, when we came back in person, I wanted to be in an office furthest from everybody. And I decided to do my sessions in a group room where I had more than 6 feet, and also my masks on, even though they're more lenient now, but that is something that I've established. And when I open that to my clients during sessions, I've chosen to do that. And I have not had any issues with that. People are actually more curious, and the conversation goes to that instead of what's, about them. And I did early on in my life experience people questioning, like if I'm having something with sugar, my blood sugar is dropping. Oh, you're not supposed to eat that. Meanwhile, I'm hypoglycemic. So then people are getting involved in your life when does it really need to be? So I've explained, here's my candy, especially if I pass out. So I've been open about it. And I'm never going to make everybody happy. As long as I'm happy and safe, I think that that's a priority in my life.
I don't have like a good, answer, since I'm not in the same boat as some of these people, but just being on this panel and hearing, Laura, the things that you even said about like that like handshaking, like this is exactly why I think we need more events like this and we need more education, because I had not ever thought about that, and I was thinking about myself being on like a busy street and my kid on her little scooter, like going too fast, possibly, like, and you both not seeing it, me feeling guilty. And also I could see myself also being like, did you not see, like, right. I can totally see both parts. And acknowledging that of like, and then I could, if you had said, yes, I'm blind. And I actually don't think I would ever say, what are you blind? But I could, me feeling like such a juxtaposition, like sort of being calm, just up against the wall and being like, wow, like I really need to check myself and recognize the things that I don't recognize in this world. There's, the blind spots that some of us have for the things we don't know. And I think likely in your life, you're confronted with people, hopefully more people like me, who really want to learn and really want to grow and really want to start to know the things we don't know about, but don't even know where to begin to kind of be thinking about some of those things. And then of course you're confronted with other people who may not care as much. I don't know if that's the right term, but have a really different like attitude to that, and how tricky that really is to navigate when you never really know. Back to your question, Robbie, like the people in your office, or not, it wasn't your question, but the participant's question. You don't necessarily know what you're gonna be met with and how the other person is going to respond.
Yeah, in some ways, we're all coming from a place of privilege. Like we all have things we don't know, a lot of things, right? I'm learning a lot every day, especially tonight. I have another question in the chat. This might be the last one. Both my sisters have mental health diagnoses and have been estranged from me for years. Any suggestions on how to bridge the gap? It sounds like bipolar and severe depression. Those are two things that I struggle with. So reaching out to estranged family members, that's another thing I struggle with. Any suggestions on how to bridge that gap?
I say just show the people that you're there for them. Maybe it'll take a while, maybe it won't be immediate, but if you show constantly that you're there for them, they'll appreciate it. I mean, when you have depression, like it's really hard to do things, but knowing someone's there can really mean a lot, especially if it's consistently. Like you don't want people just asking you when you're just like depressed, just caring about that. I would suggest just keep showing them that you're there for them, keep trying to be there for them. And if it takes a while, it takes a while, but there's definitely appreciation to be had there. I think it's very important to talk to people more and more, but at the same time, you don't have, like, if they don't want to talk, like, don't expect everything to be coming out, certain things we don't want to talk about, but, try to have an understanding with them and keep talking, just keep showing you're there. because even if they're not there right away, they will appreciate what you're doing. They'll appreciate that someone's there. And maybe they won't outwardly say it. Maybe it's hard for them. Maybe, things in the past have happened. They don't know how to speak, or maybe they get angry for random reasons. You don't really know. But if you're there and they know you're there and you're doing what you can to be there, that's what you can do.
Yeah,
The
just
rest is kind
showing
of
love.
that.
Yeah, beautifully said. Just showing love, and the question, how best can I support you? How can I be better for you? That those kind of just like honest, supportive statements sound like right on the money.
And to add to that, Wendy, and I think you're absolutely right. And the least expectations, if not any, because if you're doing it generally, from the heart and for caring purposes and love, if you expect a reaction or a thank you and so on, you are going to be sadly disappointed. But if you're going to do it in the kindest manner and hope for the best. And you never know, I forget what movie it was, but that somebody was either they were completing suicide, jumping off a bridge because somebody didn't ask them how their day was. And I will try to remember this movie. But this person at the end went back to that bridge and started just saying to people, hey, how are you? And that simple thing, you don't know, could really make somebody's day. But if you expect somebody to react for it, whether they say thank you or call you back, that like I said, you would be sadly disappointed. Do it because you want to, without expectations.
So I think that the two things, right, are this, and I would have said they totally agree, the consistency piece, right? And the doing it without expecting anything in return, right? That I think both of those things together are this secret sauce, hopefully, for starting something.
Great.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Also, maybe the reason why they're not talking, it has nothing to do with their mental illnesses too. So, it could be a whole different reason. So, whatever.
Great point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Stacy, are you still here? I haven't seen you in a minute. You're muted.
Hello, I am here. This was absolutely amazing. There were so many aha moments. And one of the beauties of what we were trying to do here today was really bring together the vastness of what invisible disability encompasses. So I'm so grateful to our guests.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Jacob, who had to leave early because of a family emergency that happened. But I'll get an update from him later. But Laura also, and of course, Erica and Wendy, thank you so much for your participation and your excellent insights and anecdotes. And Robbie, of course, thank you so much for excellent moderation for our wonderful Q&A. And thank you for everybody who attended. I want to let you know that this is just the beginning of a discussion. This isn't end. This kind of important topic, like all of the topics we discuss at Inform Your Community, are not intended to be like one and done. This is just the beginning of the conversation. So hopefully this kind of opens you up to be more willing to ask questions, which obviously you can hear from the panelists. That's very important. Willing to kind of put yourself out there, do your own research as well, and find out information so you can be more educated and have your own aha moments as well. And because it's not a one and done thing, we're going to be, after the event, probably tomorrow, sending out an email to everybody who registered. It will have a copy of this video. It'll also have a copy of our infographic, which has some of our curriculum about the issue of invisible disability, some items that were discussed, some items that weren't discussed today. And so definitely take a look at that. And in about a week, we should have all that on our website as well. So please do check out our events on our website and our issues pages under our Get Informed tab. And you should know that we have another event coming up. Our next event is going to be May 12th, and the topic is going to be food waste or food rescue. And it's going to be, we're streaming the movie, Just Eat It, which is an absolutely amazing movie. I encourage you to attend. It is a free event, so check it out. Sign up on our website for that. And we'll also, but when we send you out that email, there's going to be a survey in there. Let us know what you thought of our event, and we appreciate the feedback. We do like to improve. Again, thank you to our amazing panelists.
What's your website?
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica, for asking that important question. And I promise she was not a plant. Thank you for asking that. Our website is www.informyourcommunity.org. So please go visit it. Check out our events tab, and you'll see we have about 20 events up there that are coming up in the next few months. So definitely check us out. Thank you again to our wonderful panelists, and have a wonderful night. Please commit to doing something that's friendly, related to invisible disability and folks who have invisible disabilities. Try to do one thing to understand this topic more, improve somebody's life, and be more aware. Thank you folks very much.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everybody.